Hi, I'm Jonas Heldt. My film's called Automotive, Perspektive Deutsches Kino. It's about young women working in car industries in Germany, German cars. And I hope you can enjoy the film if you still get a ticket.
Kannst du dir vorstellen, im Büro zu arbeiten?
Nee, ich bin Arbeiter. Mein Kopf ist nicht so leer für Studierzeug.
Wie kam es denn damals mit der Studienwahl und warum, ich sag mal, ein einfaches BWL-Studium? Ich habe auch BWL studiert, ja, von daher kein Vorwurf.
Den braucht man eigentlich keinen Druck, oder?
Wie bitte? Wie bitte? Knapp 80.000 ist schon ein super Gehalt, ne, für die Berufserfahrung, die es mitbringt. Ja.
Ein Mensch ist kein Roboter, also man kann Fehler machen. Ich bin Leiharbeiter, ich kann jederzeit abgemeldet werden. Eine E-Mail an die Personalabteilung und du bist weg.
Wenn ich zu schnell bin, müsst ihr es sagen, gell? Aber es ist Logistiktempo. Der Pinguin mit seinen kleinen Füßen kann ganz schlecht gehen. Aber in dem Moment, wenn er ins Meer hineinspringt, ist er eine Top-Rakete. Was soll das Ihnen sagen und zeigen? Jeder ist einzeln.
Ich stehe bis zu den Knien, in glänzendem Benzin. Der Geruch ist so toll und ich sauge mich voll.
Mikrofon einschalten.
Täglich 3 Liter,
Wo bin ich?
da fühle ich mich fitter. Ich fühle mich erst gut, mit diesem Sprit im Blut.
Hi and welcome to the 34th Teddy Award. My name is Felix and I'm here with director Jonas Heldt to discuss his film Automotive. Hi, welcome to the Berlinale.
Hi, thank you for warm welcome in Berlin.
Yes. I was quite impressed with the film. I thought it specifically because it told a lot of sort of big topics in a very fluent way. And it sort of starts off with this biblical quote that says, if one is not willing to work, let him not eat. Maybe we can start with you telling us sort of what you want to discuss with putting that kind of phrase at the beginning.
It's like, I think if you open a film, the first moment is one of the most important ones. And the film has a lot of topics, and the most important one is work and what it means to us to live, how we live, how we think about ourselves, about our identities, about gender. And I thought this is so weird that we still have this kind of ancient thinking that you have to work to be someone, just to have a place in society, and that I think that's the most important thing, and that's why I put it first somehow.
Yeah, it tells a lot of kind of like the human factors in work and what people see in work and what.
And it becomes more human, like, and that's a good thing. That human things tend to be important.
Yeah. And there's this, well, I'd say that sort of the strongest theme is kind of that human relationship to work and what we see in it. Would you argue that there's maybe also sort of a specifically German attitude toward work in the film, or is it more like a fairly sort of general take on the whole subject?
I think that was also a reason for the quote, because of course German car industries it's a global thing. It's I mean, a lot of concepts are developed in Germany, how production works, how also workers' rights are defined, that you can see in the film. But this quote is more like a Western thing, I would say, like Christian Western thing, that's kind of, in my opinion, kind of forced onto the whole globe, that you have to manufacture things and like human resources, humans become resources more or less.
Yeah, and you're only kind of worth it to get food once you have a job, sort of. Yeah.
And that only happens to that also happens to my protagonist somehow when she loses her job. She sits at home at the lunch table, and it's not clear like how she's going to manage, how she's going to survive, and her whole existence is threatened when she loses her job. And I thought, come on, that's not care.
Yeah, no, it's true. And a lot of things in the movie are kind of told between us contrast between the characters, sort of especially between Seranu and Eva. How did you find those two? I mean, it's like they seem to embody such a specific kind of work ethic and such a specific view on work, each two themselves.
Of course, I was looking for a contrast to also generate drama, and I think they were both very interesting to me because they were both fighting and struggling for self-determination somehow, and that's why I chose them. But especially with Sida, she also chose me because she was coming towards me when I was filming in the factories, and she said, what are you doing? And said she was interested, and we did some tests with the camera, and I just felt instantly that that we had a good connection. And for me it was important not only how or what people represent, but also how they interact, how they speak their language, and that's some kind of a thing that's with all the words that I said in the film. I think most of them are not that important, but more like how you say things.
Yeah,
Are you already a robot yourself, or do you still have feelings?
And there's a lot of like very interesting insights. I mean, I remember one scene where Sereno kind of says, like there's those different types of laziness in people, you know, where you can just sort of how you work around that, how you implement that in your work ethic, basically.
I mean, with her, there were many things that I could relate to, just from not being very happy about getting up early, to that you say somehow it's absurd that you have to do certain things just to be able to be yourself. Yeah. But also with Eva, I mean, she has this very strong freelancer identity, that she doesn't want to have a boss, and that no one should tell her what to do. Yeah. But she's a very independent woman, and I think that was one reason for portraying her, and also her struggles, because she has so much. Her whole image is what she makes her money with, and when with her girlfriend, of course, that's not accepted all the time.
Yeah. How important to you was it to show that aspect of her relationship and kind of what she plans to do? Where she plans to take it, basically?
I don't know. I think for me it was important not to make it the big topic of the film, because the topic is work and car industries, and how young women try to make their way and make their ends meet. But I think it was the aspect that was interesting to me was that she also said she wants to show her relationship, and that she's not one of the guys who mostly work there as headhunters, and she calls them the old boys club. And so that made her different, and that was interesting to me, like how she manages.
Yeah, but it was a very interesting part of her personality to kind of see. I mean, she's very. There's very heartfelt moments with her, you know, like despite her having that kind of like image-based job, but she seems to be very into it and very kind of struggling in her own way.
Yeah, she's really living it.
True. And there's, well, with Eva, you have a lot of these parts where she talks to customers on the phone. I would imagine that might have been difficult at times because there's kind of sensitive business information, maybe. Did you talk about that at all, or was it more like sort of, okay?
I mean, you always have kind of, if you make a documentary, you always have to find I call it the deal. You have to find a deal with the people who have a real life, and there are always parts where people say, okay, this might be dangerous for me, and of course you have to accept that, because the film is over after a while, but people continue their existence. They're not actors. And with her clients, we made the deal that they stay kind of anonymous. Like she told me when she said, okay, this is confidential and I have a contract that this data should not be public.
Yeah.
But of course that was something I had to respect in the editing, but it was not really a problem, I'd say. Yeah.
And I found there's a lot of humoristic moments in the film as well. I mean, I remember one where one of the people in management of Imperial kind of talks about this penguin sort of appeal to work, where it is told that basically he looks at people in terms of their potential, because a penguin would be slow on land but then fast in sea. And it's sort of appalling at the same time, because Seda is kind of employed in a fairly precarious way. So the way he talks about it also makes it kind of, I don't know if that's a good, like you kind of think to yourself, I don't know if that's a good comparison.
You think that, but that's one of the points, like saying, okay, what does work do to people? Because Drago, Seda's boss, I would say he's a good Christian, like he accepted refugees in his church community and gave them jobs at Imperial when it was not really allowed. So he's an interesting and interested and heartfelt human being, and how does it come that he compares people to penguins? That was my question, and I think I don't know exactly where this metaphor came from, but I think it was from South Africa, like from Imperial headquarters, and I mean they give out some kind of things that people can say to their employees, but it's not really thought to the end. And I mean that's something you can do in a documentary, and that's an intriguing thing, because you have time with an audience, you have maybe 80-90 minutes, and you can say like, why do people say that, especially when it feels wrong to you, but it still has some kind of there are reasons why this happens.
Yes, I felt there was a lot of potential for humor in certain situations, especially with that kind of connection to work.
Yeah, I mean the whole work system or world of work that I went through with the film, to me it was a bit absurd from the beginning, like that's all the logistics processes, they're so optimized, and you think that people who work there, that they're replaceable, but at the same time, if one person gets sick or two or three, there are no cars built, you know. And that was interesting. Like, oh no, it's not that hard actually.
And there was one scene as well with Dr. Michael Korte, which seemed like a fairly tense moment as well in the film, because he talks about like the automation kind of development. He's in charge of such developments and parts, and it seemed like a tense moment, because that was, I think, specifically in that scene something you wanted to talk about. Could you tell us how that went? Like how that specific kind of part of the film went?
I mean, I always asked the same questions somehow. They were partly very practical, they were partly philosophical, like saying, okay, what does work mean to people in the future? And of course, people get irritated by that, and I knew that. But I really wanted an answer, you know? Like I said, come on, anybody should know what those developments, like with automation and digitalization, what will happen, because car industries, they were always the trailblazers, like with the conveyor belt and so on, how we work. And I thought maybe he could answer the question, and he kind of gives an answer in the film, but it's also his answer, like as an engineer and as a manager. And of course, some questions, very practical questions, like what somebody who drives forklifts could do in the future. No one can answer that question. I think that should. It was important to me that that's part of the film in the end.
And there's some ambivalence there because maybe it just kind of you want an answer, but there's not a straight one kind of that he wants to give maybe.
But that's also a good thing. I mean, you can also say, okay, I can't answer that question, and if you do that in an honest way, that's good. But I mean, also with Audi, of course, there's also a lot of press staff who looks at how the interviews go, and they interfere a lot. So it was very hard to get something out of that situation. And then I felt like, okay, maybe that's the interesting thing, that there's so much pressure in those film situations, and so I also tried to put that in the film somehow. And on the other hand, sometimes the filming is very relaxed and very easygoing.
That's sort of that translated really well. There's also kind of a musical score that you put the images to, which kind of seems to me to reflect the business you talk about. You know, it's kind of very rhythmic, fairly industrial in that sense. Could you talk about how you wanted, what you wanted to add by putting in that music score as well?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a German guy, and I'm really into techno music, and I mean, electronic music is the rhythm of machines, basically, and I think that was the idea that robots and large factory halls, it felt kind of right to me to make it like a mechanical rhythm that's also driving, and you can also, in the film, dive into that drive of the white, beautiful, clinical machine worlds, but it also feels empty and threatening somehow, and that's what the music expresses there, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, there's this beautiful scenes in the smart factory, and it just kind of feels that way. It feels in a way beautiful, but at the same time kind of ghostly. There's nobody there, and just kind of, it seems as if you're looking at some sort of future where you're not exactly sure whether that's good or whether it's actually horrible.
Yeah, it's a bit retro-futurism.
There's also documentary pieces from different times, which I would guess looks sort of like the 80s, maybe early 90s kind of material. Was that also meant as a kind of throwback to a simpler time when people had different attitudes towards work?
That was not really my idea, but it's good if that's one association. For me, it was, I mean, work is like a proto-documentary topic somehow, and I was kind of making fun of that because there's so many documentaries, so much documentary material about how people work and what they think about their job, and there's so much funny stuff in the archives. And I just say, okay, hey, this is another documentary about work, of course. But at the same time, I think it's important to say, okay, it's still important to reflect about those like proto-documentary topics. The same as like in fiction films, when you say, okay, it's another film about love, what does that mean? It still can be new and still give new ideas. But at the same time, I think you should also look back into film history and say, okay, this is what people have done before, and there were great moments.
Yeah, a lot of great moments actually. There's one of these moments which felt particularly kind of staged, where there's one of the workers in that kind of 80s documentary on work, and he kind of goes like, working for a living, not with me. It's just a way I get money to spend it on hobbies.
You almost know the film by heart.
I like that moment a lot.
Great. Yeah, I also love it.
Okay.
For my hobbies.
That's true. Okay, I think that's it from me. Actually.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. Yeah,
Very
it was really cool.
welcome. Thanks.
Okay.